Commissioner Davidson.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Commissioner McMurray.
Here.
Chairman Dodd.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair, have you had a chance to go over the minutes from last time?
Yes, Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes from our last meeting, and without objection, I move for approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Did anyone sign up for public comments? So no public comments tonight. So the first item number 3 rather, on our agenda is the mayor is asked to take some time tonight to start educating all of the committees and public viewers on he and Denise's thoughts about the Forensic Center. So, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sorry to call you by your first name.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. If y'all would join us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief, or unless the committee has questions, I may not be brief. But as this committee knows, we have secured the services of Bart Klein and Associates for the purpose of doing the architectural and engineering work on a proposed forensic center on Weekly Lane in Smyrna. And so, as Denise and I have thought through this, there have been several events that have taken place that impact this that I want to make you aware of that make the matter more urgent, but still within the time frame for us making a good, solid decision on what it is we're trying to solve, why we're trying to solve it, and what that cost is. After getting with Denise, what we thought we would do is the 3 committees that we want to kind of just spend a little time with over the next 3 or 4 months as we enter into the budget process. Instead of just beginning this conversation in April or May, we want to spend a little more time laying the groundwork for the why, the what, and the how, if we could, and then give you guys time to generate questions so we can come back at the next meeting. And those committees obviously would be public safety, where the resolution will come out of for a recommendation to budget. But Denise and I felt like this committee, Health and Ed, ought to have some influence in that because it is health, right? And so there's an equation there. Property management, I did get it right this time, Commissioner. Property management wants to know more about the facility itself, so there's a little bit of oversight there. So we just thought it'd be a real good idea to begin this process in January, not spend a lot of time this evening, but just kind of prepare you for saying, hey, what we want to do is we're going to make different types of presentations before this committee, property management and public safety, before we ask for a decision to move on to budget. And so this meeting is nothing more than to kind of lay that groundwork. What we would like to ask is, after we do this and we start to generate questions, please send those questions to Rachel as soon as you get them, because I can see where it might require a bit of research on our part. And with the other things that we're doing, we want to make sure that we give you an exhaustive answer to your question, if that's okay.
So I would suggest tonight, if I may interrupt.
Please, absolutely. And I prefer that you interrupt.
Informational, and I don't anticipate us talking about expenditures tonight or cost. There's certainly no vote tonight.
No, we're not asking for that. This is information gathering for your benefit, so we all can make an informed decision.
To build our questions so that later on you can be more just thinking.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. You and I are exactly the same page. So we just want to spend a little more time on this process than we did last year when we brought the proposal for architectural and engineering. Having said that, I will give you some parameters. We're looking at plus or minus a 15,000 square foot facility that will cost no more than $15 million, including all fixtures. In other words, lock and key. And when we say lock and key, we're ready to begin operation, if that makes sense. So 15 million, okay? Michael Smith tells me that within our current budget, we have several options available to us that do not adversely or negatively impact our budget, nor will they. And the reason that's important is several-fold. But first, it's very, very important. With the property tax increase that we did last year, we're not coming back and doing that again for something like this. We're not doing that. The second piece to that is we did a very good job as a county commission and as the mayor's office on maintaining our AAA fund balance, which is very important as we go forward later this evening and talking about borrowing for school. So we want to maintain that. So we're not going to erode the integrity of our fund balance with this project, which we will need for the funding of schools, if that makes sense. And then third and finally, we just want to be as conservative as we can in the expenditure of the monies that we have available to make sure this is the best use of those monies for this project at this time. So those are the kind of the three things we're going to we want to nail down. Having said that, there are two events that have happened in the last 90 days that put a bit of a stress on us. And I'm going to let Denise talk about those a little bit, but the first is that Shelby County at one time served themselves and 11 other counties, 12 total counties. They sent letters to 9 of those counties saying they could no longer do autopsies for those 9 counties. Those 9 counties are now bringing their autopsies to Davidson County. So Davidson County went to servicing 53 counties to now servicing 62 counties. Rutherford County is one of those counties. If for whatever reason we get a letter from the Forensic Center in Nashville saying we can't take care of your 350, 375 autopsies a year, we literally have no place to go. Literally. Chattanooga can't take them, Knoxville can't take them, Johnson City can't take them. We literally do not have a plan B. That concerns me a lot because as mayor, I believe you should always have a plan B, if not a plan C and D. We do not have one. So that's number one. Number two.
It was $350 annually?
It's about 350, 375 in that range. The metric, the association, what's the association?
The National Association of Medical Examiners.
Thank you. They say on average it's about 1 autopsy per 1,000 population. Our population's 375,000. So that's where that number came from, Mr. Chairman. The second component to this is that as you know that in the last 5 years, 6 years, 4 years?
Yeah, 2020 was the first major increase.
That's correct. We have seen an increase in the cost of autopsies go from $1,800 to $2,300. And now we've received a letter that they are going from $2,300 to $2,500 per autopsy. And the price keeps going up. So if we were to get the green light to build this facility in the coming months, it's not unimaginable, but before we could be operational, our autopsies would be $3,000 a piece, based on the trend of the escalating price per autopsy. And so it is our goal to make this facility operationally as neutral as we can, and we believe we're putting together a business plan that would allow us to have a minimal operational impact. I'm talking about a reoccurring expense to the budget, a minimal effect on the budget. And we're not there yet, but that's what we're trying to get to, because we kind of know the number of employees we're going to need, we kind of know the types of employees we need to have, what those wages, but we're still backfilling in with some of the costs associated with the employees, which is about 75–80% of the total cost of running a facility. So it's pretty easy for us. We know what the electric bill and the heating bill and the utilities are going to be, those kind of things. We're just trying to nail down the costs associated with the employees. But I'm saying all this to say we're diligently trying to get you the information you need, just like we need, so we have a good understanding of what we can expect. And Denise, I think you wanted to add some things.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
If that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
So
Rather hear her than you.
Thank you, sorry, man.
Mr. Chairman, am I dismissed?
Where you going, Dr. Sullivan?
I got a nosebleed. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I will say that comment wasn't entirely expected. He acts like this in purchasing meetings. I think it's the room. I really do. Mr. Boyd and Mr. Phillips can attest to this.
This is getting
I
out of
don't think
hand
it matters
quick.
what.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate some of the points we've been saying up until this point, because obviously one of the potential issues that we were stressing is that we could be without an option. So I know it wasn't an easy decision for West Tennessee to make, to say that they had to suspend service for these nine counties, but it was one as a necessity. So now that these 9 counties are having to go to Nashville for their service, the impact on those West Tennessee counties is huge. They've now got to transport their decedents' remains to Nashville. Some of these counties are 3.5 hours away. So not only does that impact the counties themselves with transport costs, it's impacting law enforcement for when they need to attend autopsies. So now they've got a 7-hour round trip potentially, let alone the time they need to actually spend at the Regional Forensic Centre. So obviously that's impacting law enforcement's budget with overtime. It's impacting the funeral homes that have to go and collect those remains and bring them back to West Tennessee for the services, which obviously the cost of that service is going to impact the families that are contracting with these funeral homes, and also just being able to communicate with their office and being able to go and sit down with a physician to talk about their loved one's case. I mean, it's a huge impact on those families too in cost and ability to communicate. And it's going to hit our courts too. So now these Nashville physicians, forensic pathologists, are going to have to testify in these West Tennessee courts. So it impacts a lot of different things. So that being said, as the mayor alluded to, this could happen to us too. There's no obligation for these regional forensic centres to provide a service to a particular county or county. So at some point, Nashville could turn around and say, sorry, we don't want to service you anymore, and there's nothing to obligate them to provide that service to us. We also don't know what the impact of those 9 additional counties going to Nashville is going to be. We're already seeing concerns with quality and timeliness has been one of the big things that we've been honing in on, that it needs improvement. Well, with now another 9 additional counties coming to that facility, that same staff is going to have to deal with all those counties. So the potential for the timeliness and quality to get impacted even further is true there. So if Nashville can't sustain taking on these 9 extra counties, what are they going to do? Well, one of the things I'm concerned about is from a public optics scenario. They might say, well, it'll look less impactful if we drop 1 county than if we drop the 9. And our county, Rutherford County, its volume is about the same or more than those 9 counties put together. So that could become a very real possibility that could happen. The other thing is the reason why our costs keep coming up and there's nothing we can do about it is because we're a captive market. There is no other option for these 62 counties now to go anywhere else. Particularly for a county our size, Knoxville are at capacity. They don't want another county, especially not one this big. And even if we could go to Knoxville, we're having the same impact as those West Tennessee counties. It's going to be 3 hours for us to transport our bodies, and that impact is going to be felt by law enforcement, the funeral homes, the families particularly, and the court system. Our other option is Johnson City, 5.5 hours away, which is going to be even worse. So we don't have another option either to control the budget, or if worst case scenario hit that they said we can't service your county anymore, and they have to be accredited. So with that much additional volume, accreditation's a potential issue there too. And if that accreditation gets hit, 62 counties are going to be looking for service. So the whole forensic services division in the Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee at this point is going to be impacted. So the burden on the staff is truly something I'm concerned about. We brought these issues up before in presentations in our documentation, but this just goes to show you it's truly real. This has happened in West Tennessee, even though it was a very difficult decision for them to make. And it happened in 2004 as well. So we based that risk factor on historical. And our FD can refuse, for numerous reasons, but those are some of them. So we need to be able to control our forensic services. We need to be able to control the budget, but we also, like the mayor alluded to, we need a plan B, we need a plan C. And the best way to do this, in our opinion, is to have a forensic services in Rutherford County so that we can control all of those potential issues and needs that we truly have now.
I have a few questions, Mr. Chairman.
Please,
So,
Mr. Gooch.
thank you, on the 1,500 square foot building.
15,000.
15,000, sorry, 15,000. What would be the capacity that we could do a year? I mean, obviously, the capacity would be at least 375.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what more?
Right.
What could be the, say, the max?
Yeah, well, the SWIG MDI, which is a scientific working group for medical legal death investigators, recommend 9,750 square foot for every 500,000 population. So,
Okay.
so
So quite a-
so based on that, at least 750,000 population we'd be serving.
And so it would be a possibility that we could contract with other
Oh,
counties?
so let me just jump in here, add,
Okay.
not just a possibility, once we have, and it would be a learning curve for breaking in the facility, obviously, but I can see within a year or 18 months, us opening up this service to the surrounding counties, because again, Middle Tennessee's growing, it's the fastest part growing of the state, and so we'd be the only second forensic center in Middle Tennessee, and so the opportunity to service those counties at a commensurate price of what's going on in Davidson, but with better quality, better assurance, and better turnaround would be.
And not gonna have to pay the bills?
Oh, absolutely. And we're working on the metrics on what the cost is if we have, once we have this forensic center, what is our actual cost now to do an autopsy, right? So once you get where you're paying your reoccurring cost, now, and you have excess capacity, which is what you're alluding to, now that capacity is filled in by Coffee County, Bedford County, and Warren County, and now they come in and they spend $2,500 on autopsy. Well, we've already covered our costs with our own autopsies. Now we're paying back, if that makes sense. So that's how we get in the black with this situation. So this becomes hopefully a self-sustaining operation within the county. That's the goal.
I was thinking that now, and I know we've been talking about this for, over a year, I think, different questions and so forth. But is there a partnership with McCary or MTSU? Do we talk about any kind of a partnership?
There was
Or-
potential for it, and and hopefully that would be something that would grow.
But it's not necessary?
It's not necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, look, if I may,
Yeah.
what we are talking about though is I have broached this subject with the city of Murfreesboro and the city of Smyrna, and they're intrigued with discussing, genuinely intrigued. I've talked to both mayors, and they're interested in having a discussion about assisting the county with the capital cost, okay? Which is important, because we're continually looking for opportunities to bring the cities and the counties together when we all have a shared opportunity for the return on investment. And so there's an opportunity, whether that comes to fruition, I don't know, but the city of Murfreesboro and Smyrna are interested in having a conversation about, and its timing is perfect because everybody's budget year begins here shortly, and so we'll be asking them to participate with us in this capital appropriation.
And just one more question. So if a family wants an autopsy, then the family's paying for that.
Mm-hmm.
If the sheriff's department has suspicion and they ask for one, then is that when the county pays for it?
Yes.
Or does it?
Yeah, the only people that can order an autopsy in the state of Tennessee is the county medical examiner, or the DA if the county medical examiner fails to act. So if law enforcement have a reason, so do we.
Okay,
So
and then-
at that point, yes, that's covered under the county.
And the county pays for that.
Right.
And if it was in the city of Murfreesboro,
The county pays for that.
the county pays for that.
We own the body, they own the site, is how that works. If there's a criminal investigation where there's a death, the county owned, for lack of a better term, the county owned is responsible for the body, and then the city of Murfreesboro, in this case, as an example, is responsible for the investigation of the site.
But the turnaround, that's how it's going to benefit the cities. Is it the turnaround?
Yes,
and
well,
the
and the quality, we got some quality problems in our investigations, whether it's Murfreesboro City, Smyrna, Laverne, Eagle, Rutherford County. We got some quality problems on the investigative side because of the backlog of autopsies they got in Nashville. That's creating quality problems because, and this is something I've learned, especially like in the case of an infant death under suspicion, that body decays much quicker than an adult. And so the timeliness of doing that autopsy is particularly important for gathering forensic evidence. Am I saying that right?
Yes, for sure. And
So we got several factors that are at play here that are holding up quality investigations.
Mr. Boyd?
Yeah. When we first started talking about this, there was a grant available from the state.
That was an FSAG grant through the state, but from the federal government.
And
Yes, sir.
the way I understood it, that money was still available, but it got pulled, but it's still there. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
That's
That
not-
money that FSAG money has been completely spent. I guess I'm public here, so I better be careful. We did not get
didn't get it.
the grant. I'll just leave it at that. And I had
I understand.
and so then subsequent to that, I'll be candid, it's not a secret, then I went and visited Governor Lee on December 20th with the specific purpose of saying, you know, would the state be willing to do a one-for-one match with the county? In other words, for every dollar that we put up in construction costs, would the state put up another dollar, up to $10 million for each, or a $20 million facility? And he said no. But I have been assured, Michael Smith and I are working on it, it is imperative with all the demands that are going to be placed on this budget, especially education in the next 2 to 3 years, whatever we do not adversely impact that. We understand the importance of that, and we will not do anything that negatively impacts that. And Michael has assured me we can do that. And we will lay out those options at the appropriate time when we've got those built together. Okay, we're just not ready to present those yet. We're way early in that process.
And we've been 23 minutes. So again, because this is informational, and contemplate deeper questions, and we'll have opportunities to ask those.
Yeah, and so if we don't get any questions between now and the next meeting, we may not have anything to present. The next thing we're going to do is we're waiting on Bart Klein to give us a kind of a rendering of the facility. When we get that, then we'll get on the calendar unless we have questions that we need to answer, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Definitely get on property management.
Oh yeah. We're going to bring all that to everybody.
Just, if I could just have one follow-up. There's been a lot of, we've talked about this for the last year, but it's been 8 years. In this room right here is when the process began 8 years ago in public safety. And there were representatives from the state of Tennessee, and there were representatives from MTSU, if I'm not mistaken, here as well. And it sounded like there was a lot of excitement in that process. When you come back, not only to this committee, but the other committees too, start that process all over. It was way before his tenure as well. What we started discussing and where we are today and why we're here the way we are today. It's nothing wrong in doing that, but the history of where we started and where we are would be real important, I think, for us going forward. One other thing, the 15,000 square feet, is it looking to the future? It's going to meet future needs, not beyond.
Oh, yes. And everything this county constructs in the way of a new facility has the ability to expand with a minimal amount of cost associated with it. We can't, with the growth of this county, we can't do anything but that, Mr. Chairman, so absolutely.
if I could add just something quickly as well, that's part of the design plan, is to make sure it can expand. But that's one of the biggest mistakes the current RFCs have done, which is why Knoxville, they're in the process of building a new facility. They're having to completely move it to another area. Same with Hamilton County. Nashville's got nowhere to grow. They're landlocked. So this is one thing that we've
made those mistakes in the past too. So.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, Mayor.
Oh, you can't make it now.
Is that your parting shot?
The makeup show.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Kirby.
Well, we're trying.
Mr. Kirby, Health Department report.
We have a couple of items before you tonight. We have a report, and then we also have our annual co-op agreement. So I'll start with the report. You should have this made available to you, our monthly the outreach report for December. One thing I wanted to point out in the lower right-hand corner, the mission statement. Our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Ralph Alvarado, he was appointed by the governor last year, and he spent a year kind of studying and coming up with a strategic plan. He also kind of polled the counties. He polled the Tennessee Department of Health employees, and he polled county, frontline employees on the mission statement. And so they've done some refining to that, where before it said to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of people in Tennessee. Now they've changed that prosperity to well-being. And they kind of, the feeling is that's more holistic, more all-inclusive of the person, kind of includes a little mental health as well. And so it seems like a positive step forward there. And then also they've added the word to all people in Tennessee rather than just people in Tennessee. So speaks to accessibility for people with need here in Tennessee. So I wanted to point that out because as you all know, that mission statement kind of sets the tone for everything that takes place under the roof. So, in keeping with our mission to protect, promote, and improve the health and well-being of all people in Tennessee, we protect with our disease intervention there in that first column. And then we promote in the second column there with our health education and our diabetes outreach and our vital records administration. And finally, we improve with our primary care services, our dental services, and our HUGs and CHANT services, our community outreach that we do there. All these numbers are on track, and we're kind of pleased to see, especially in the dental program, you can kind of see the year-over numbers. We have nearly doubled the amount of people we saw. The previous year, of course, COVID had something to do with that, but a great deal of it was the dental expansion that the governor has put into place last year that let us provide more services to uninsured adults beyond the emergency services that we kind of did before. So there's a lot of preventive care going on there.
Quick question before you move on.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these numbers correct though? If you look at it, current year, I'm looking at AIDS prevention, 160 for December this year versus 392 December last year. Is that a significant drop? Is that correct?
Over the same month as last year,
That's a huge difference.
that is a difference. I would be glad to look at that and confirm that's the same. What I've been told by our disease intervention people is that things are kind of cyclical, and they will see ebb and flow, and it is not unusual to see a kind of, I don't want to use the word surge, but an increase. And so, but
I was just curious if that was because of the legislation that decreased or removed funding in that area.
I did poll our people. They said that hasn't really affected us as yet. It more appeared like it would affect some of the non-government organizations that serve certain populations. But as I understand it, there have been other means of funding made available to them. So we haven't really seen.
And your STD had a significant drop as well. So I was just curious.
Well, we'll be glad to look at those numbers and let you know if there's any reason for them. Moving on to seasonal respiratory illnesses, a big concern to all. They do continue to circulate. RSV continues to decline from its peak in late October. COVID and flu, those still considered high in Tennessee, are trending downward. Our past two weekly reports both reported a downward trend, although Tennessee is declining slower than some of the surrounding states. So you may have seen news reports about it's still very high in Tennessee. Sometimes some of the metro areas retaining high numbers will skew for the whole state, and that's what we've seen in regards to Rutherford County. These are numbers from the Essence system, which tracks chief complaints and discharge diagnosis from the 105 emergency rooms across the state. I did say that the influenza-like illnesses were reported at about twice the rate as COVID. So about 8% of emergency room visits right now are considered influenza-like illnesses, and about 4% COVID. And that's a significant drop from what it was in the past year. However, our COVID-19 status in Rutherford County, they use a hospital admission metric, so that's still considered low. That's less than 10 admissions per 100,000 population, and we're well below that. We at the health department do continue to offer free COVID-19 testing to the public by appointment through our health department clinics. I like to remind everyone the federal government has reopened that test kits by mail program, so if any of your constituents ask you about it, just covidtest.gov is the best place to go and order those kits for your home. You can do that home testing, and that at least lets you know what you're dealing with, whether it's COVID or not, flu, and then you can call and request antiviral medication. The Tennessee Department of Health does have a community support hotline. That is 615-770-6940, and that answers all kinds of questions about COVID vaccines and any flu vaccines as well. COVID vaccine, we do have the Moderna available. We also retain the Pfizer for those children that started the Pfizer vaccine. There is an RSV vaccine available right now, and we do have that by appointment at the health department as well. Flu shots are free and available, and flu season often extends from October to as late as May. And so there's still a few months, of possible exposure to flu. So anyone that hasn't had that flu shot yet, we do recommend it. As of December 31st, 155 million doses of flu vaccine had been distributed in the United States. That is a slight decline from 2020 was the most recent. We've seen kind of a falling off since then. Of course, a lot of factors involved in that. The flu vaccination rate in Tennessee is approximately 44%, and that's a little below the national average. And that does conclude my report.
Any questions?
I think I asked this question before, about public service announcements. Where are we regarding that? As far as, you're talking about these metrics and how incidence is high, but vaccination is low. What are we doing regarding
Tennessee
public
Department of
service?
Health does do PSAs. They do, run those in social media as well as traditional media. You do see a lot of news reporting, and that tends to, usually it's looking back and saying, hey, our flu numbers are really high right now, but meanwhile, we've been kind of beating the drum steadily since before flu season and encouraging people to do that. So that is something that our new commissioner is very enthusiastic about, using non-traditional sources of media to get that word out there.
Does our county websites, I don't know what our viewership is, but our county websites and our PO, are they available if you need to broadcast?
They absolutely have been, and that's something we could possibly utilize more, because we did utilize our PIO to get word out about our fight flu, but we could do that, as long as flu season is about, just to remind people that that option is there and available.
Thank you. I'll consider a motion to approve the report.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. And you had an amendment, our budget item.
Yes, sir. This is our annual co-op agreement. So this is, you may recall this from this time last year, it was January of last year. It kind of formalizes the agreement between the state of Tennessee and Rutherford County on funding of our health departments. And we did have an opportunity. We received this document from the state accountants last week. We had an opportunity to get that to Director Smith and his people to have a look at it, and they returned it to us, and we present that to you today.
Is there a difference?
There is there is a difference in some of the figures. The key figure probably is item B at the bottom of the first page, and that is what the county's actual out-of-pocket, and that is static. That is the same as last year and the year before. I even saw one from 2015, and it was this exact same dollar amount. The other amounts are ones that come from the state or are reimbursed by the state.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
In regards to, due to the decrease in vaccination rates, there's been a surge in measles across the country. Do we have any of that going on here in the state or the mid-state? Are we keeping an eye on that?
We are keeping an eye on that. I haven't seen any reports of that. And I would actually say our school system is, the reports we get, the children are they're very compliant with those fundamental vaccines. So we will keep an eye on this.
Okay. And then lastly, is there, I get updates, working in the healthcare field, updates weekly on different things. A new variant of COVID that's coming through.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to let people know, hey, take precaution because these things are very serious, and so.
That is something we have learned about COVID. It does mutate quickly, and so that's something we're always trying to keep an eye on. What'll probably happen with the COVID vaccine, just like is traditional with the flu vaccine, is they will monitor what's going on and then try to prepare a vaccine that addresses those most common claims. Something we're always looking at.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. McCray. Thank you, Mr. Cumby.
Yes, sir.
Community care, please have a look at the minutes of their last meeting. If anybody has a question, otherwise we'll move on to item 6. Director Smith, so item 6, special project report. This is where funds for schools that have been approved and bonded.
Can you give us a minute to look at this for a second?
Look at the special.
Community cares, can we get a second?
Community care real quick.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And under the special projects, if you would, Fund 199 as of December 23. The next item under special projects is the audit findings. That will be at the bottom of our agenda. So this part of our agenda, we are specifically looking at special projects. And so we'll come back to the audit findings as our item 7E. Michael, hit us up on the special projects, please. And I'm going to stress one more time. So this, yeah, I've had to revise it here in the last few minutes, Commissioner Oliver. So there will be a 7 D&E. The special projects, you'll see that some of these funds that are available have been moved over to be utilized in other school projects. So just to tee up Mike.
Yes, so on your iPads tonight, we did get the Fund 189 Capital Projects Fund uploaded for you. So as of December, at the end of December 28th, we had $144 million in there, the majority of that being for the high school additions. Now, the one thing I want to point out, and really the purpose of making sure y'all had this tonight, was the school system is going to request to move several items coming up on their part of the agenda. But I want to point out 2 things. One, if you're looking at the report, the far right columns, you're going to see a column that says not obligated and one that says not expended. If it's not obligated, that means it's not budgeted for that project. And so those are the amounts you're going to see that are going to be moved to fund some additional requests. And this is also important because a lot of this money is left over from previous bond issues or from previous projects. And so that is allowed to be moved. Now keep in mind what they're going to request tonight does involve elementary going to elementary, middle going to middle, and high school going to high school. Now, middle can go to high school and high school can go to middle school, but we need to keep the elementary going to another elementary school. And that is what is happening tonight. But this is what's as of December. And so the reason I wanted you to have this is so that way when they make their request, you can have this in front and see exactly what projects they're wanting to move and how much money is related to those. And with that, I'll take any questions with what you have in front of you.
Any
So-
questions on phase 2023 building program? Yes, Ms. Oliver.
You're saying not obligated, which is showing 20 million, almost 21 million. Am I looking at that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, and then not expended.
That's gonna be cash. So if you'll go to the very first page, I'll give you an example on the burn middle annex. So that project from our records is pretty much done. And so what you're gonna see is not obligated and not expended is gonna match. Okay? And so if you look at some projects, and I'm gonna flip to one other one after that, I want to show you that one. So if we go down to, let's see the project that's not done. If you go down to one of the high schools, go down to Riverdale is probably the first high school I think on there. It's probably gonna be on page 3.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to tap it for it to clear up. But yes.
So if you look at that not obligated is about $4 million, and the not expended is 50. But that's because that project's still ongoing. So we've got contracts out, POs open, and we're drawing down. So not expended is going to be the cash we have on hand for that project. But sometimes that cash is already committed, based on the contract. So for Riverdale, I think Biscuit is doing Riverdale and Oakland. So they're not done, so we've still got cash left to pay them as they finish. But generally, for a rule of thumb, if the non-obligated and the non-expended equal, generally that's when the project is done as far as for this report. Now there are some exceptions, but for the most part, that is pretty safe to say.
If you take that Riverdale High School example that you just mentioned, $1.3 million in non-obligated, what does that really mean? Will they still have an expense there?
I don't see your 1.3.
Under architecture,
Architect.
item 1.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Under Riverdale?
Riverdale, yeah, the architectural line, the first line.
Oh, so we lump, one of the things we do is we don't do an itemized list, and so if you'll notice, we'll stick the majority of all the construction costs in one line, just for the sake of this report. We're tracking the total amount of borrowed money versus cash on hand for us. The school system is gonna track according to the schedule of values with the contractor, according to the FF&E they buy. They're gonna track that to make sure they're getting what they paid for and what they want, because that was a school system bid. We're tracking the bond proceeds, how much money they have, the extent left in the project, things like that from a higher level. The school system keeps a track of when they get the payout, for example, from Biscuits, kind of schedule values and where they stand with everything from the roofs to plumbing to electrical, and then they'll have their FF&E for furniture. But like I said, we lump it a lot of times in one. What you want to focus on for this is that bottom line, $4 million, not the. You'll notice some are positive, some are negative. That's because we've got most of it lumped in one line.
On the Riverdale High Addition example, the $4 million not obligated, could we at this juncture say that?
No,
that
because it
is
could
$4
be that
million?
they have a bid that they haven't done, or there's something that we just haven't seen. No, we will I will never recommend that we move any of that until they're done with the
yeah.
project. But it could be that they have an FF&E bid that we just don't have it. Contracts to date is going to be physical contracts, or it's going to be POs that they have out. So it could be that maybe they haven't ordered something, and so that not obligated could go down, and it very likely will.
Get concerned.
I'd have to look it back at Trey.
The vast majority of that's gonna be our FF&E, and we haven't started purchasing
That's what I
any
was.
of that yet.
But when they do that, they're going to pull a PO or have a contract, and then it'll go on that contracts to date. But I was just wanting to show you an example of where you're going to see a really large number not expended because it's at the start of the project. And as we cut checks, I would assume the bid for that is probably right around 55 million, 50 million. And so that's why that's all lumped in there. And you'll see FF&E doesn't have a budget number, but it's because we haven't seen a PO or a contract for them yet. Hope does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Just one quick follow-up there. Under Riverdale, the site development, the last line is 7.6 million in contracts and 7.6 million non-obligated. I'm struggling to figure out how that can be.
What I'm saying is we don't, when we do the funding mechanism for the budget, I lump everything in one. This is not a budgeted fund. So our county fund 171, the schools fund 189 are not budgeted funds. They're budgeted based on a project total basis, which is why the most important line is to look at the project total. The school system keeps an internal budget of what they want to spend on site, FF&E, and they're gonna have their own contingency line items within their contract with Biskin or RG Anderson or whoever. I think that's the main thing they're using,
So that line item really doesn't mean that they haven't spent any money on site development.
Correct, they've actually spent on site development, according to that line, they've actually expended to date is $51,000. And then they either have a PO or a contract with whoever their site developer is for 7.6, or it may be, or it may be Biscuit.
I don't want to get, you want me to come up there? Well, no, I don't know that we need to drill into that.
But ultimately,
If Mr. Phillips
this
is-
report is not gonna keep a line item budget because it's not required. Now, my office keeps the budget as a whole to make sure that they don't overspend the project. But as far as FF&E, if they've got a little money left over for FF&E and they run over a little bit in the GC package, the school board has that leeway to move around. The county, as the funding body, has approved that $56 million to go towards that project. And so that's what we track, for y'all, and then the school board will look at the itemized list to make sure that they're in compliance with that.
So we're a high level presentation, and I've found it most valuable when it gets down to where the not obligated, not expended, when they get close, I'm starting thinking, hey, that could be some money could they move? But
That's why I showed you the example to start with on like the Laverne Middle where they equal. And I'll give you another example. In Laverne Middle, you'll notice, if we're looking back at that, I don't have a budget in there for site development or engineering services. We lump, when y'all do the funding, we do the bond issue. The bond is issued to cover the entire, anything related to that school construction. So we don't issue a bond for the GC package or for the site. We issue the bond for the entire project as a whole.
And then this will be a component of further conversations tonight as well. So if questions evolve as we look back at this here over the course of the night, please turn them back up. So if there's not any further questions, then immediately we'll move on and know that this will be a topic in a moment.
I'm not talking about items done. Romero didn't bring me in, so you brought it for somebody else in here.
So I'm not going to vote to approve that report. That was informational. If we can move on to school board. So Dr. Sullivan, we'll start with the budget amendment and then education update, then we'll bring Trey up with other items. And Dr. Martin, you coming up or you staying back?
She's gonna say, I should Mr. Dodd, I'm not seeing the general purpose budget amendment on there that was sent on January 7th. It was an allowance. There was a big cleanup with that, so I'm not seeing it.
The general school fund.
Yes, there should be one.
For 141, 3.7 million?
Yes.
I printed it from the site, but I haven't gone back to look tonight.
Right. It was there. I know it was there. I don't know where it went.
Michael, was that one supposed to come off? Because I was told to update those.
No, I'm sorry. The one that was supposed to stay on, the one that was supposed to update was the one that I think is on there as well. It's this one. We can make, what if we made copies of that one?
Yeah.
And then we just go to the next one and
Okay.
me or Brian will run and go make
So
copies.
this is the one that we're referencing, so we'll get it copied right quick. It's the one that, if somebody reviewed this earlier, it was on. But if you want to me look like everything.
It is.
Yeah, it should be before about that.
Can you, is that okay? Thanks, Eric. Yeah.
Sorry for the confusion. We had to update some numbers on one of the items, and so I apologize. I sent those to. I apologize.
And just building off of some previous comments and community concerns, let's be sure that we get that uploaded back up. So if anybody has any questions later on, anything we discussed tonight, let's be sure, on our behalf, it's not on your behalf, just make sure we, I know you sent it over, I saw it come through. So in lieu of that, then therefore, I don't want to go to the capital request component yet. Is there any Because that's the only budget amendment prior to the capital.
Correct.
Is there any Board of Education enrollment items
Yes.
that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, so we are at 51,700 today. We actually, we did 2-hour delay today, which was trying to get our kids back in school. So I thank our various municipalities and just our local highway department for allowing us and helping us to get back open, because we were only one of about 5 that opened today, and some are even still closed tomorrow, and so we needed our students back. Our attendance was higher today, the rate was, than on January 12th. And so I think everyone rightfully so was ready for their kids to go back to school. And so they went back to school today. I could not believe on a 2-hour delay. We had 4,240 out today, and we had right under 4,400 out on January 12th. So it was pretty good attendance for us.
And you contribute, you said you could, I'm sorry.
No, please.
To the road commission.
Absolutely.
Out there.
Absolutely.
City school.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. It's not a call that we want to make, but we're all part of the same county, and they helped us.
And I think it's good that y'all can talk like that.
Absolutely.
So that, I know you can talk with planning and
Yeah.
everything, so good job.
Yeah, it was great. It helped us tremendously. We wouldn't have been able to open without their support.
And that number is up. Did I interrupt someone? That number is up, Dr. Sullivan. You were at 51 and some change to 51.1.
And
Did you count it any differently, or did you add any of the at-home kids? This is attendance.
Yeah, and it's surprising.
That's 600 up.
And we dropped a little bit at the very beginning of the year and have jumped back up. We usually see a little bit of a decrease in December anyways, because we have students that graduate early. We still get funded for them, but we see a decrease. And so it's down just about 100 from what we saw in December, but it's high.
Yeah.
It's very high.
My grandson did object to your decision.
I know,
but-
I'm sorry. So did my own children.
Did what
So
he did.
it's okay. My own children did too. They were not happy with it.
I just want to know if James Evans is the superintendent or not.
You know, my own son, one of his friends called him and said, James Evans is the superintendent, and Asher's my youngest, without thinking. He said, no, that's the old one. And I was like, no, that is not it. That's not it. That's not
So
how
many
that works.
parents, I'm like, yes,
He can be a hero.
He sure can. He sure can. Yes, and so that's what our enrollment update is. We have 4 inclement weather days remaining. Really, we have 3. We have a teacher workday built in at the middle of March that we count as an inclement weather day that we had to use, we could use it. So we have 4 remaining, so we're in better shape than most places. So overall,
I thought about something last week, just considering the experience that we had with COVID. Has the idea ever been broached about maybe going to something virtual in the event of?
Yes.
I mean, because that was like
yeah,
a lot of instructional days lost, you know?
we're allowed to do 2 a year. So that's all the Department of Education will allow you is 2. And so we try to hold those 2 to the very last moment if at all possible. But we
Gotcha.
have 2 remaining if we need to use them.
Gotcha.
You're saying Commissioner Oliver doing a virtual day instead of having a snow day?
Right.
Yep.
Just so you don't lose all
Yeah,
the instructional
Yeah,
time.
you can use 2 remote learning days a year is what they call them. So, yeah, we have that option.
How many how many snow days are you saying that is automatically built in?
We have 13 because we go an extra 30 minutes. We take 4 out for teacher admin work days, and so that leaves us with 9. We used 1 for our safety days, we originally had 8. So we used 5, but we still have 1 of those admin days we haven't used yet.
And beyond that, it's just you would have to extend the school year.
Or ask the Commissioner of Education, usually waives up to 5. Clarksville, Montgomery had a tornado come through at the end of December, and they got a waiver last week for 5 days. So we should be okay.
No penalty to the kids, they just move on. Any other Board of Education updates, any items? I'm hesitant to start any of these
I
next 2.
totally get it. We have our school choice enrollment applications are due on January 31st. We've received 2 charter school letters of intent. Their applications are due February 1st, so we very well could have 2 more. 1 from Rocket Ship and 1 from Novus Academy. And so we haven't received those applications. As soon as we get those, we have our 60-day window to review starts.
So you said charter?
2 more charter school letters of intent.
Is that 5 total? I missed it.
That would be 5 total. Yes.
I've noticed 1 is well underway out
Yes.
at Blackman.
Yep.
Is it the furthest along? What's going on in Smyrna, Commissioner Wilson?
As a matter of fact, I was going to talk to you, Jared
from Springs Charter would like to come speak to this committee, if that would be something the chairman would be good next month, just to give you an update of what they're doing, what the timing is, and just answer any questions that the committee would have on how they're operating for our
Are they
February
underway?
meeting.
Have they broken ground? Are they looking for a building?
They have located land. They've already been through the Town of Smyrna Planning Commission for approval, so we're kind of at that point, and the rest of it would be just to kind of see what their timelines are. I mean, truthfully, we've had this discussion in committee previously. The amount of seats is still minuscule based on what we're really looking at. But it would be good to get a report from them on what they're looking at, of what they can do. And I want to go ahead and say too, spring is our partnership with Rutherford County Schools as we hold that charter. So that's a good one to kind of start talking between us all about, to answer questions on how the administrative parts will run and how we'll be partnering in running together with the administrative piece.
And Blackman is slabs on grade.
They're not ours, so they're Tennessee Charter Commission.
They're the one we turned down, that was, by appeal came back?
Yes.
But it's still, it's not ours. I thought they forced it upon us.
No,
It's different.
they're
It's a
run
different
by the
relationship.
State Department of Education.
Right.
We have no oversight.
Right.
On the other ones, do we have oversight? Limited?
Limited. We're the authorizer, so we have some oversight.
And that's really some great questions to talk with
Yes.
Jared, is since that is, since Springs will be a school that we do hold our charter, this would be one for us to see what that looks like for the future relationship. What kind of administrative oversight do we have, and how are we partnering with them? How people have questions about testing, how their test scores work with ours. Those are great. This is a great starter conversation, since this is something we're clearly moving towards. We need to get a handle on it early.
And I'll tell you, I had a good conversation with the Department of Education clearly related to that, and it'll be interesting to you all. Our board passed a resolution last night, so there's a loophole in the charter school law and TISA law that deals with funding. Charter schools receive funding up front. As a school system, we don't receive funding for new students until a year after. So even though we're the authorizer, we're gonna have to send funding for those students that are going to be at our two schools that are ours, but I won't receive funding for their students until the next year, so it's almost like we're fronting them. So we've asked a resolution for that to be, we've asked for that to be fixed. And I think we have support from our delegation, so I appreciate it.
Good. Those two updates.
Yep, that's amazing.
So we have the 3.729 million,
Yes. Yep.
item budget 141 amendments.
So you see this budget amendment cleans up expenditure line items at mid-year. On the revenue side, the budget's amended to reflect state grant allocations and additional TISA revenue. On the expenditure side, the larger items of this cleanup amendment reflect the increases in cost of school maintenance supplies and parts, instructional support supplies and materials, homebound 504 contracted services, maintenance contracted services, and maintenance instructional equipment. Also, this amendment includes adjustments to salary lines for additional approved ESL growth positions, bonuses for hardest staff school, nursing growth positions, reclassified pay grade for behavioral EAs, and a transfer of salaries to correct account codes. This amendment has a net increase of both current year revenue and expenditures of $3,729,367. And on those other pages, you can see where this increase in revenue came from. So on the very next page across the top, we received an additional 1.7 million in TISA. We actually should receive more than that as well. So that's what is going to be unique, and it's part of what we'll talk about, I'm sure, with our audit findings once we do those in a little while. What is unique about TISA is that you don't get all of your payments right up front. We get what's called outcome funding, so we won't know our outcome funding, which is how did our students actually perform the previous year. We get outcome funding in December, and so we don't budget that because we don't know what our outcome funding is going to be. The other portion of that is fast growth funding. So we were given from the Commissioner of Education that we would receive one amount for fast growth funding in November, and then we got a completely different amount in January. And so we increased, which is why we don't have that budgeted yet, but there are some counties, if they went ahead and budgeted what they were told, they actually lost money. And so that's why you see us do these amendments, and so that we're not counting on money to meet our budget before we actually realize it. So that's the first one's 1.7 in TISA. And then our early childhood education is our voluntary pre-K grant. That's for 1.9 million of an increase for your overall same number of 3.729367.
And this is, I know there's nursing growth and ESL growth. Were those brand new expenditures
They
that
would've
were
been.
not in the budget we all looked at?
Yes, but those positions came back to you all, I believe, in September when I came and asked for a movement for ESL positions.
Okay.
ESL is a continually growing one.
And I believe that was for compliance?
It was. We're probably, as soon as I get my new count, out of compliance again based on the way our growth went. But I need to, I literally get the first 20 days of each semester to determine that.
And the nursing growth positions and the ESL growth will be funded through, does this fund them through the year?
Yes, it does.
And then next year you have to pick them up on your budget and?
Correct.
And part of this being TISA, we should continue to see some.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this, I know growth positions, we gotta be really scrupulous, and I think these growth positions are justified. We're compelled, the money is coming from the state as we had hoped.
Yep.
So,
And sorry, Commissioner, we also have in reserves extra to add to this if we need to, so that we don't run into some of the issues we're gonna talk about tonight, so.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So, funding from TISA is a lot of hearing is after the fact. Now, is that different from the BP?
Right.
Was it? And I guess my question is, do you see going forward in the future that any fund balance for this fund may need to be higher? They're paid to.
Correct question. TISA overall is giving us more funds monthly. What was really communicated with the money was supposed to follow the child was what we really believe the money was supposed to follow the child. On the 15th of every month, we have to have our new reports into the Department of Education, so that on the 20th, they send new payments. That's not actually the truth. It's actually the next year we would get the payments for it. So for all those new students that we have added so far, we'll receive payment for those students next year. And so that's not different from BEP in that we would receive BEP growth funds for districts and you would get that twice a year.
Well, when they catch it up on the new students, let's say it's 1,000 new students, and they're going to catch it up. Do they catch it up for that year and the prior?
Just that one year.
Huh.
So
we need to get our delegation.
The year that we have a resolution to them already. The year that Rutherford County Schools, the year Rutherford County Schools ceases to operate, we'll have one more year of getting funds for the kids that are no longer here. So if the state constitution ever changes, there will be 1 year we'll still get extra funding for it. So it's frustrating for growing districts because we're educating kids without revenue.
But I mean, do you see going forward then that we need to have a larger fund balance because of that?
I'm concerned about let me get my numbers right. I'm concerned about the 25-26 year budget. We have every intent to present a balanced budget again this year as well. Even though we had audit findings, it was still well under what we expected it to be from last year. I'm worried about 25-26. We're being strategic in how we're granting some of those positions so that we don't have all of them hit at one time. We will transfer positions from where we're moving kids to open the new elementary, but you're always going to have some type of cost for new schools that are operating. And so that's the year I'm most worried about. I feel good about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And please continue to be scrupulous. We have heard the request and had some discussion. Open for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. And a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Mr. McMurray?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Aye.
Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Do you have a hard copy to scan up, or do you want us to
Yeah, I
just
can do
email
that.
it?
I can scan it tonight. I've got one.
It has my chicken scratch on that last page. I don't know if I want that scanned. I think the math worked, though. On our SharePoint is what I'm calling item 7D, and that is I'm looking for the capital. the capital amendment, Dr. Sullivan, is it on there?
Should be, yes. I believe it's the same.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
that is it. General purpose school fund budget amendment is the next item, and it's a capital request. We've discussed the Beatty School coming on board. We as a committee have been looking at which three projects, Phil? Roy Waldron,
The Laverne.
Church Street,
Church Street and the Laverne High School
and Laverne.
addition.
And so over we did a site. We were aware of the site at the Beatty School. We discussed it previously. Since that time, Mr. Lee has received bids for the Beatty School, and the Director of Finance for the Board of Education, Dr. Sullivan, and Michael Smith has been working diligently to put together, absorb that number, that $59 million construction number, FF&E and design, et cetera, and how to best fund it with the parameter that this county commission budgeted this year a $60+ million bond for schools, and we're trying to stay within that parameter that prompted this next capital request item. So it didn't get on our budget early, or on our agenda rather, because it's been fluid up to this point, because the bids came in
Thursday.
Y'all dissected them Thursday and Friday. It hit, Michael had to help us resolve the funding mechanisms to get it to the Board of Education on Monday. Hence, here it is with us Tuesday. So I'll step back, and Dr. Sullivan, Brian, and Mr. Smith, if y'all would dissect this for us.
So first, we had bids on Thursday. We received 5 bids. So we had a question. You guys only discussed one at our commission or our board meeting. We only discussed the bid we recommended, but all 5 are on the tab on our Board of Education website, ranging from 48,417, which is the base bid and what we're recommending, all the way up to 58.30. And so that's where our base bid motion came from. You all don't see that individual breakdown, but once I read this, I'll read what the actual breakdown of construction, FF&E, all that is.
I'm sorry, you intrigued me with what components of the 4 or the 5 bids are on your website? Is it line items, high level?
Yeah, it's just the high level, the actual amounts.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Are
actual
the
amounts.
bids public knowledge? Are they? I'm sorry, Trey, you got brought up and didn't know. We'll move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, they may not be uploaded yet, but they will be.
Okay,
They're
thank
available
you.
for inspection, because they're read publicly. It's a really exciting time, so.
All right, cool.
Never.
Yes. Website for the board agenda is there.
So they are, you said they are on the site?
Well, we get about to get the board meetings, so yeah.
That's on the board of ed.
Or under purchasing. Yeah, so if you've never had a bid opening, so they're published, they're announced. We had an architect lead them, so whoever the group architect is, they open all the bids, they read all the bids, and they read the contractors, all the amounts, their sealed bids, and literally at 2 o'clock, they slam the gavel and start and read them and open the numbers from there. So that's where we go with the bid conversation. So. You'll see I'll do the general purpose school fund budget amendment. So on Thursday, January 18th, purchase and engineering construction received bids for the construction of the Beatty property in elementary school. All bids have been reviewed, and engineering and construction recommends R.G. Anderson Company for a total project cost of $59,857,000. So total cost is $59,857,000. To tell you where that comes from, construction is $48,417,000. We have construction-related costs of $2 million. We have FF&E of $4 million. Design of $900,000. Another $900,000 that's already been previously funded out of 189. And then for architecture and design, we've already previously funded another $3.64 million from 141. And that gets you to your total $59,857,000. So that's just wanted you to hear, we were talking about the breakdown to special projects, that's what we look at. But now you'll see the actual cost of what we're asking county commission approval for. Previous approval for allocation of funds of $4,540,000 for architect fees and site development reduces the total amount of the project to $55,317,000. The Board of Education recommends $30 million to be allocated to Beatty Elementary project from Fund 141 unassigned fund balance. This reduces the total project amount to $25,317,000 to be requested from the County Commission via bond issuance.
Which I don't know if I've ever heard of before in my few years of the Board of Education coming with a school bid and offering $30 million.
I've never seen it.
We had generated a bond commitment of 60, and we're asked now to give half of that. I just think that's interesting. I know there's a lot of moving parts. The board's ask is huge in the 5-year plan. But I'm just impressed that they come with cash. Now I also want to say coming with cash is scary because the fund balance in lieu of conversations of growth, we want to make sure that we maintain a fund balance to respond in those rainy days. So
What would that leave?
80 million.
About 14%. I believe the state minimum is 3.
It is. And I do, if you don't mind, Commissioner, I do believe credit needs to be given to our former finance director and school director, because during COVID, we really were able to get quite a bit into our fund balance. So despite all the other conversations that entails, there needs to be credit.
Credit to Mr. Spurlock,
Mr. Buttery.
to Doug Votary, to Don Odom, Gary Sandvik, or Jeff Sandvik, excuse me, and then Gary, the gentleman that had your...
Clardy.
Sir?
Gary Clardy.
Gary Clardy, those guys that I've encountered in the last 10 years here have just, again, left you with a rainy day fund. So I'm just pointing that out to some of the newer guys.
I do want to give Brian a little bit of credit because we did inherit a $28 million budget deficit that we were able to navigate, even though we'll discuss our audit findings. Being in a $28 million budgeted deficit and coming in $10 million to the positive, that was a good $40 million swing that helped us tremendously.
And ask for maintenance of effort.
Yeah, that helped
same year.
tremendously.
I could wander, but I'm going to come back to, because I'd love to wander, but I'd like to before the motion, I would like to let Mike, let's have some discussion on this.
So I want to make a comment. I know this commission, or this committee, and then our full commission has really been advocating for growth to help pay for itself, whether through school facilities tax, impact fee, and stuff like that. And I say that to say is, this mechanism, I can't emphasize enough, is really our last straw to try to fund everything without some type of additional revenue. Meaning we don't really have, we can't pull from, it's not really a rainy day fund, but I can't really pull any more from fund balance. We can't, there's not a lot of other mechanisms we have to try to do all the projects that the school board and commission want to do. And I'm not saying that as a negative that we should approve this, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I just want to keep that in mind as we're looking for new revenue growth, how important it is to try to find that, because we kind of exhausted all of our options that don't involve another tax increase, that don't involve cutting something dramatic, like an entire department or something. We've kind of done everything we can. This is kind of our last option that we've kind of worked through. We don't really have any more good. All the options after this are not great. So I just want to put that on the table as we look at this, so that we know going forward kind of none of the options next are great
The risk, you're still within your comfort level at this risk.
Still within my comfort level. I'm saying the school system has exhausted all options from funding something within their current cash reserves. I don't know that they would have, they're not going to say it, I'm going to say it for them. I don't know that they have any more options to give. I would not feel comfortable going below that from a cash. I know the state minimum's 3. We could not make payroll if we went to 3. I'm not saying they're suggesting that. So I'm just saying how important it is that we continue that fight for some type of growth funding, because we don't have, we're going to be in the same boat on the county side, but the school system kind of has exhausted all of their internal options. I feel like in good faith effort, as we work through kind of some funding options, But I just felt it was important to note that.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to throw out some bullet points for my own edification to make sure I have this straight. The chairman referenced earlier that we had about $60 million that we were looking forward with our debt service of being able to make room because we've known about this elementary school ask coming for some time. Am I correct in that? So if I look at all the math of all the things being asked today, let's see if I have this plan right. The $30 million, number one, that's coming out of funds that have already been shared, which satisfies anyone that's been following our budget committee the concerns on spending our money in the best way possible, which is for those watching that don't understand, we have to share elementary funds with the Murfreesboro school system. And we'll say that's about a 15%. When funds go into our 141 General School Purpose Fund, those are already shared funds. So by using those funds, we're not having to borrow additional money to also share with Murfreesboro. So you guys have decided, and it's a great plan, you're using the maximum amount of already shared money on elementary school, and I think that's great. Those facts are correct? Yes. The balance of $25 million for us to get, if we look forward and do some math here, we're thinking that in 6 to 8 months when we get bids on Laverne may come in somewhere in the sweet spot of $35 million or so. We're getting to where you're thinking about taking the $60 million allotment we've been planning for in debt service for about a year. It is the idea that $25 million goes to elementary, the 35 approximation we would hope it would come in would pay for Laverne. So therefore, we're able to accomplish and stay on schedule without a tax increase because we've already allocated for this in our debt service. Is that all those facts fair to say?
Other than it'd be about 30 million instead of 35.
Because we have to share the funds with Murfreesboro on the amount we borrow for the elementary school. Just so everybody understands that, we have to cover that approximate 15% shared funds, so we have to borrow up and above beyond what we need. But that's about right. So we're trying to kind of thread on what our debt service capacity is already at, and we'd be able to do all these projects without a tax increase. So the first thing I want to say is that is some very creative and very good work on trying to make this work, because we're staying on schedule. I have one question I want to ask though. We've thrown around different ideas of how to spend all of our money collectively working together. Where does this leave us on a land purchase for future high school? Because if I'm correct, middle school will be on the Bailey property, and the funds we've already allocated are actually going to help. That will be cleared off. We're funding a school at some point. Where are we on the land? And where are we with just an update on negotiating on land for the north end?
We're taking another tour of another property hopefully on Saturday if we don't flood. One of them we believe is probably too hilly for us to build on. Other one we are still somewhat in negotiations with, but it's not in our perfect opportunity of what we need right now for our revenue that's available. Unfortunately, I think of where we are right now, it is Laverne High School or land, and we need both of them.
And the Laverne High School edition would get us up to the same 2,500 or so. That's the plan, correct, that we have at our other editions, okay? How much time does that really buy us on when we need to purchase land to think about? Because I believe the middle school is the next thing the school board's looking at. So, but I'm trying to think in advance of how we're knocking these things out year by year. And I keep thinking that high school is going to come up within a couple of years as far as meeting to actually start it.
Correct.
But we have nowhere to put it right now. So I'm just trying to make sure for myself and everyone listening, we know where we're at. What we're doing today is voting on a plan to take care of what we already planned on doing first. So we're in order. I just want to bring up these challenges to come. Our next big thing is land for a high school, which is not even the next school we're talking about building, but we've got to be forward thinking immediately. And that price could be anywhere, right?
About 180 million right now based on $400 a square foot.
And that's for the building.
Yep.
What's the land? Could be anywhere between 10 and 20. So we've got that we got to think about as well. I'm very happy to hear that Laverne's getting this addition because they need it badly. So I'm glad that we're getting that done. In fact, we need the high school and the Laverne addition just to take care of Laverne and Smyrna in that section of the county. So,
and what we have before us now is a $59,857,000 elementary school. Best bid accepted by the school board, and they're they've offered $30 million in cash. It's been considered by our finance director. They've offered $30 million in cash and requesting a bond of $25,317,000. From the $60 million bond capacity that we voted in June of this year. That's the motion before us now. I'm glad we occupied some of those other thoughts, but any further discussion on the funding of Beatty Elementary School as presented? And I would entertain a motion.
I'm going to move that we approve and forward this to budget with a positive recommendation
I'll second.
for approval.
And a second. Any further discussion? Right? Yes, Mr. Smith.
I want to make one comment that I forgot to make earlier. Just so we're transparent with this committee, and I'll go into more detail with the budget committee. We were planning on borrowing in the fall. And so one of the things now we're looking at is borrowing in the spring in conjunction with a refunding with some of our current debt. So I just didn't want anybody to throw off when you see that coming to the budget or commission either this month or next month is kind of what we're looking at. So the time frame has changed a little bit based on interest rates environments and based on us hoping to refinance some debt. So just wanted to throw that out there so you weren't blindsided that if it comes up in budget or the full commission in February.
And a positive recommendation, if it's so voted here, will allow Michael to take the $25 million bond, which will help our capacity and help our bond origination fees and help our total refinance bond package that he'll talk about in budget coming up. But in effort to save about $1,900,000 in debt over the next 10 years. But this helps that occur. But we've had a motion and a second to approve the $30 million cash contribution and a $25,317,000 bond for Beatty Elementary. Call roll, please.
Do we have a motion on the second? Yes. Sorry.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next is item Fund 189 reallocations. And this is back to Michael's initial, Mr. Smith's initial commentary on special projects. So we'll tie all those together. Dr. Smith, or Sullivan.
So we looked at these, we had originally planned to do some of these out of fund balance, but trying to lower that total amount that we were asking for to be able to save the shared split, penny, all of that. So that we instead looked at moving some Fund 189 reallocations. First one is Laverne High design budget. Rutherford County Schools request to reallocate $2.5 million from Fund 189 Plainview High School to Laverne High School for design services. Michael, anything you want to add to any of those? Already money sitting in 189.
Yeah, I will add this one thing. The school system, this will allocate the design services so they can get started designing and bidding it. I believe the school system has stated they'll come back sometime in the fall in the next 6 to 10 months. I'm giving some leeway there. They'll come back to their board with a bid number for that design and a bid number there. And then we will have a look at a couple of options. I will say on the table is some bond anticipation notes, some interim funding. We may want to go to the bond market again, depending on interest rates. There's a lot of variables there, but this would get them off started on the design and then allow them to bid. But I think their plan was to come back to this body sometime in the fall, and then we would have to look at some different options there, depending on the economic conditions.
Are y'all good with looking at all three of these as one item?
Mm-hmm.
Carry on.
Yeah.
Dr. Slade.
Okay.
You done, Mike?
Second one we have been talking about for quite a while. It's 814 South Church Street property. Instead of going out of fund balance for this, and listening to our budget committee request to reallocate all remaining funds from Fund 189 Rockville Middle School, $983,133, Smyrna Middle, $1,149,573, and Stewart's Creek Middle, $329,250 to the Church Street property. And that property preliminarily is looking like a middle and a high school site based on the one below.
Middle and high school, alternative school, and some administrative offices.
And this hasn't gone out to bid yet. We just had an architect 2 weeks ago, so there may be future movement within 189. We have to come back, but this is our anticipated right now.
And the next, the Roy Waldron.
Last is the Roy Waldron Annex renovation, formerly Laverne Primary. Request to reallocate remaining funds from Fund 189 Rockville Elementary, $1,450,269, and the future middle school, $925,769 to Roy Waldron Annex renovation. And that is looking like an elementary and a middle school. 1-8, you can't do a kindergarten alternative school, so a 1-8 alternative school / special needs behavior type setting to provide some more specialized treatment.
And we could entertain questions on all three of those in any order, I suppose.
Chairman, my only statement would just be make sure I have clarity. So this is all previously allocated money that is in completed projects. So we're simply moving them on, and you've done them in order of high school to high school, middle school to middle school, to keep everything, shared everything in place. I don't have any questions. I'd like to move for approval as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gooch and Mr. Miller. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowie,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks for the motion and second on both of those. Folks.
Before we move into the audit, thank you guys for your support of that.
Yes. So I'll tee up Dr. Sullivan on this week because is there anything in the agenda? Nothing. So an audit was performed and the audit results started hitting our inboxes. I made sure all you guys got the email. I had to go and ask Michael Smith and Mr. Runyon and Dr. Sullivan to get some details, make sure we have opportunities tonight to ask questions, get a good understanding, because the email we got was so like, hey, we had an audit, we got busted, period. So it's gratifying for me that I have dug into it personally and have found it very reasonable understanding, minuscule in the scheme of things, but there are consequences. There were some budget items that could be managed better, and there's an opportunity to learn from this, and we have a corrective action that's very doable. So, Dr. Sullivan.
Yep. So of course, first, you never want any type of audit finding, and so we take that very seriously, something that we really started looking at. I always like to start off with a positive, so ultimately, you need another one? Sorry.
Oh, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's good.
Okay, so, sorry, I'm gonna start off by looking at the one that has 225. So 225, this is Fund 177. So this one's one that's just a budgeting error. It is not an error as far as not having cash on hand. It really just moves into showing a budgeted deficit, even though we didn't necessarily have a deficit. You want to hit on that a little bit more, I guess? So 177.
Yeah, so basically what I showed the board last night was if you, if you look at the column that says budget amounts, there's two columns there, one's original and one's final. If you look down at the very bottom where it says fund balance out to the left, June 30th, 2023, it shows that negative $227,277. That is your budgeted deficit that caused the audit finding. And what had happened basically, and Michael can kind of speak to this, I think, because I'm trying to remember back myself, we did a budget amendment at the end of last fiscal year that caused it to go into that deficit. Originally, we budgeted expenditures and revenues equal. But we ended up, I think, pulling money out of fund balance, which caused there to be a budgeted deficit in revenues. But what I like to just point out is that's budgeted amounts, so that's a budgeted number. So budgets, as we know, sometimes are estimates, they're not complete and total 100%, actuals. So if you go to the fourth column over where it says actual revenue / budgetary, or / expenditures on a budgetary basis, and look down at the bottom where it says fund balance as of June 30th, we had a cash in there of $5,877,298. So we never had a cash flow issue at all during the whole time. We had the money there. It's just when we did that budget amendment, it caused the budgeted amounts to move into a budgeted deficit. But we always had cash flow there to be able to handle anything we were doing in Fund 177. So we never went into an actual deficit with our cash. So
It just looks like it on paper.
it looks like it on paper.
I know these aren't fun to discuss, but you guys know I've been transparent from the beginning, so I wanted to sit here and discuss what happened. So that's our first one.
6.7 was expended, and anticipated 6.5. And the audit caught the difference.
Yes.
So there was some mathematical failure, a lack of observation on the document.
6.7 wasn't expended, so what you're looking at, statement K11, exhibit K11 is directly out of our audit report. Our audit report is 360 pages. It is online if you'd like to read all 360 pages. It's riveting. So this is a statement directly out of there. And I'm going to walk you through, we're going to try not to get too into the weeds, but I get a lot of questions. So the first is going to be actual column on an actual basis. So we actually received $20,254,254 in local revenues in that fund. We actually spent $11,121,007. So we showed a surplus of $9,133. But then in government accounting, we have encumbrances. So once you take into account prior year and then current year encumbrances, you were left, then that's where you have an actual on a budgetary basis, not a GAAP basis. So your fund balance at the end of the year was $5.87 million for an actual fund balance at the end of the year. Then switching over to original and final budgets, your original budget was balanced. It was 18 million in revenue and 18.4 million in expenditures. If you'll notice, there was a budget amendment taken at some point throughout the year to bump that to 25 million. And so where the mistake came into place is really we had plenty of revenue coming in. There should have just been, instead of coming out of fund balance, we should have added some revenue into the budget because we had plenty coming in. And so what happens is we budgeted 18.4 million in revenue. The final budget for expenditures was 25.1 million. The difference in those is 6.7 million, but our starting fund balance was 6.4. So that's where you get your difference. We didn't, on a budgetary basis, we didn't have enough fund balance to cover, but on an actual basis, we ended with 5.8 million in fund balance to move on to the next year. So what should have happened, and hindsight's always 20/20, the school system would have brought a revenue amendment along with the expense amendment. And of course, hindsight's 20/20. But we came in $2 million to the good on revenue on an actual basis. We budgeted 18.4, we came in at 20.2. We budgeted 25.1 was the final budget for expenditures, and we only spent 20. So we came in 5 million under in expenditures and 2 million over on revenue. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So.
And that's always a challenge for us, being that we can't really do projects on schools until the kids are gone. And where fiscal year ends on June 30th, it's a year.
And I'll add one thing. One thing that makes this tough is and this, I'm not saying this as an excuse, it's just the reality is, when we're looking at encumbrances, what encumbrances are is we're pulling POs from prior year, and their projects are going to span multiple years. So if you're going to go and do a renovation in the school, it's definitely going to span multiple budget years. So without getting too into the weeds of accounting, when you close out some prior year encumbrances and stuff, it's going to roll into a fund balance amount. So it very well may have been that at a certain time throughout the year, something closed out of the fund balance, or we corrected something in fund balance, and so it may have showed positive when Brian brought that budget amendment. It just so happened at the end of the year when we come in and clean up everything. We don't close our books until about the 3rd or 4th week of July. They're technically closed on June 30th, but from a practicality point, we don't close until about the 3rd or 4th week of July. And so if you'll notice, there's quite a bit of money in encumbrances coming in and out right there, POs. And so it very well could have been at the time we brought the budget amendment that it wasn't a deficit. And we'd have to go back and look at every single transaction. But like I said, hindsight's 20/20, and I think Brian's put some stuff in place so that doesn't happen again.
We'll cover the next one. It may lead to the wrap-up kind of questions there.
Second one's probably the most frustrating one, just from a director of school standpoint. So a couple of things. One of the things when you are looking at your overall budget with a salary line item, you can't go over any salary line item. And so that's where these audit findings came from. I think we had 18 of them that were over different amounts from somewhere in the teens of dollars to 1.6 million.
Wow.
Well, the 1.6 million sounds bad, but I'm showing you where it comes from and what percentage of the actual budget it is. And so that's what this audit finding is. I think it's in budget deficiencies, and this is where it comes from. So I'm looking on the sheet right now that's got red, yellow, and green on it. So this is Fund 141.
Page 1 of 47
Yes.
on the upper right.
Yes. So if you'll see that very first thing in red is 71,100. And then below that is the teacher line item. That entire budget is $265 million. You will see that overall, if you go all the way down to the right in bold, we still had $6 million available in that account. However, when we had, above that, you see the teacher line item is 172 million. We amended a little bit more in, but then our encumbrances were 174 million. So we went over in that line 1.660, but we still had 6 million left in the overall account. And so we were over by less than 1%, but the entire object code, or the entire account there, only spent 97% of its budget. There's a couple things that we have put in place to fix that, but there's also going to be some challenges. So what some of our challenges are with our teacher line items specifically is that when we look at this at May, and of course, it's just the reality. This is Brian and I's first time walking through a budget that neither one of us created. So we're walking through a budget, we see it in May. We look at about $146, $147 million that we've expensed in May. We divide that out by 12 because our teachers get paid in June, but then we go ahead and it's called accrual. We go ahead and take their payments out that they're going to get paid in July and August. And so that threw it over. A couple other things threw it over. Back in February of 2022, our board passed, maybe in January, hard to staff bonus areas. And so I know the rhetoric was out there, the board approved bonuses that wasn't school system or county commission approved. That's just not a correct statement. The Board of Education approved that. It was part of our overall budget. We came back because of having huge deficits in January. And a lot of our schools, especially in the North End, Roy Waldron, had a ton of openings to start the school. We did hard to staff school bonuses. And so if someone would agree to do that, then they got an extra bonus for that area. When you take in the teacher accruals, so we take June's payroll, but then we also take out July's payroll and August payroll. Those are 3 payrolls that hit at one time. You take out the bonuses that got paid, and we are very grateful for the General Assembly to give us funding for summer school. We can't draw that down until the governor's budget is passed. And so once the governor's budget is passed, we can draw money down, and we have to make sure we hit the timing just perfectly so that we can get it before our board to approve that funding, health and ed budget, full commission. So that's kind of the situation of how we got to all of these. What do we do in the future? You guys know I tried to be, we budgeted for this year down to each individual person. Like, this is the person, this is how much they make, that's how much money we're putting into there. We're going to add extra revenue into these account codes to make sure that doesn't happen again. Does that mean that our fund balance is probably going to increase in some of these? It probably will. I don't like that because I wanted to be completely transparent with our budget and say this is the way the account looks, this is how much we plan to spend down just a little bit of a variance. But we need to make sure we have enough money in these teacher line items so that that doesn't happen again. And so that's our corrective action, is to make sure that doesn't happen. The other part, if you look down at the next one, 71,300 teachers. So this career and technical education teachers. that overall budget for teachers was 11,512,000. We did a budget amendment where we reduced 100,000. We shouldn't have reduced 100,000, and we went over $5,491, so 0.05%. But what I'd like to call out again is that entire line or budget was only 94% of its total expenditure. So there was cash available in every one of these lines. It just wasn't put into the right salary line.
So all of this is
Bookkeeping money.
just bookkeeping.
Yep. Some other ones that I think was a big surprise to me, being my first spot in that role, was that if we have somebody in our central office that retires and they have vacation days and they retire, we may have only budgeted their salary. We didn't budget to pay out vacation days. And so I've got to have enough budget amendment left in there to be able to cover some of those payouts as well. So again, apologize for for all of that, but it's something that we unfortunately live and learn. I don't believe there's any penalty for any of that. Is that, Michael? That's just not a cash flow issue. It's just a budgetary process issue. So
As an overall, if you look at this total, there's about 1.9 million that we were over budget in all these 18 line items. But if you take that and compare that to the $501 million, that was the amended budget amount. It comes out to 0.004% of the total overall budget. So we know the reason why. You know, they do and create these audits. But like as Dr. Sullivan said, we do have things in place. We're reviewing these every month. You know, making sure we're staying within. And that's one of the reasons why, personally, I know Michael has his way of doing his budget. That's the reason why I like to do this mid-year cleanup that y'all just approved. It gives me a little bit more insight to see where I'm at and to where, whenever I come for my cleanup amendment at the end of the year, then I'll be able to put that money in to the budget to where we have all this covered. And we're not seeing this again at the end of the year.
Don't lose any sleep on this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, because I sure as heck have.
I bet you
School board has
have.
too. I appreciate that support. Thank you. Yeah, especially when you see when we came in with such a big deficit and we only spent 95% of the budget. That was beyond frustrating to work through a budget to not realize the deficit and get revenue.
What did this do to our overall audit rating, Mr. Smith?
Nothing. We still got a clean audit opinion. The best opinion on our 360-page report. It is at the very end on page 354 is where the audit findings start, I believe, the actual detailed audit findings. But we got the cleanest opinion you can get, which is called an unmodified opinion for government. We did last year, and we've applied this year for the GFOA's certificate for our financial statements and our audit report, it includes the schools as a component unit. So we're still really proud to get that best opinion that we can get. I did speak with the auditors, a little more detail on this. On some of the line items that were like $1,800 or $500 over budget, they would not have taken a finding. It was the teacher line item that triggered it because of the materiality nature of that. And so they really have no option at that point. I will point out one thing. The finding reads that we didn't have authority to spend that budget, that money. And that's a true statement, because you're going to have some but the reality is when that comes over here, the county finance office, we got kind of two options here. We send back a lot of things, whether it be to the highway, the schools, stuff like that. But when it comes to this, the only option is not to pay the teachers, right? And so I think it's a different story if we don't have money. We showed a surplus, I believe, about $13 million from 41 this year. So you kind of have two options there. We go ahead and spend over budget and get the teachers paid, which is the option we chose. Or we could not take the audit finding and not pay 5,000 or 6,000 teachers. And so we chose what I think was the best option at the time. And I think I'd still like to choose that option. So, but yeah, no penalty. Still got the best, cleanest opinion you can get. They did have some deficiencies for Commissioner Gooch.
I'm really grateful that it's such a small percentage, but I don't want to make light, and I think, Brian, you mentioned this as well. We don't want to make light. Thank goodness it was a small percent, because there were some general accounting practices or there's some room for improvement fortunately, you had budgeted as tightly as you did, and we had fund balances to catch it up. And we feel like the responses have teeth, have legitimacy, have the capacity to catch this.
I do believe we'll put extra funding that we may not expend in that area,
Yeah.
so just be aware of that.
And I don't want to, I think there's been either fact or myth. Some school boards budget, they pad everything. They pad, they go over, they pad, and then they want the same amount next time. These guys went line by line. They went employee by employee and cut it to the bone, cut out $35 million in debt, came back with the maintenance of effort. And in that tight budget, some stuff was cut too tight. And some practices were to catch it. I still appreciate the fact you cut it so tight. So thank you for that. Any other comments, questions on this? Chairman Phillips or Vice Chair, I don't think there is a vote on this. It's a information.
So we do have a county audit committee. Our audit report as a whole will go to the county audit committee, is available for download for anybody. It's on the comptroller's website. We just submit it to all of our rating agencies and stuff like that. So we'll talk about these findings at the audit committee. The county, I'll just tell you, the county got one finding as well, because our OPEB report was not done by August 31st. That's done by a third-party actuary company. I'm sure we'll talk about that at budget at some point. But I will say that I know we have a couple new commissioners. That audit report is for the county and all the component units under the county. We have a consolidated, or it's now called an annual comprehensive financial report. So that's going to include all of the component units, including our E911 district that's part of us, Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority. All of that is in there, including the school department. They are considered a component unit of the county. And so, but that'll be discussed at the audit committee. The auditors will come at the request of the commission if you would like them to. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, if y'all want them to. But yeah, that's where it'll be discussed.
Very good. Thank you, and thanks for sending that. I'm glad it came out. I was grateful to get the summary. Mike sent the summary out. That summary could be sent if anybody requested. We can, as a matter of fact, we need to upload whatever was discussed tonight. Let's help do that. So you have a final comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I do want to thank the school board. It's School Board Appreciation Week, so I thank our school board for their support and looking at things a little bit differently than we have in the past. Second is I will not be at the February budget or commission meeting, which is horrible timing since that's when the school will be proposed. But as part of what I want to do, I want to get a national superintendent certification. In Tennessee, you just have to have a bachelor's degree and 5 years of experience. I want to have a national certification, and I have to defend my capstone project the Wednesday before, and there's not a flight back to get here before Thursday. So I apologize, but hopefully I will come back nationally certified.
Well, we have a commissioner who can fly you back. We fly around all the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to go that far.
We want you back, so you just take, come some back.
Commissioner Goose said he paid for a private plane.
So you can't Uber it on me.
No, I won't be able to. No, not in California. It'll be a long.
Charge it to your credit card, Commissioner Goose.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bring it back, Mr. Goode. You weren't the instigator of that.
I know. You wrote me.
Any other business for this?
I'd like to make one just quick announcement to get this out there. The League of Women Voters, back I believe in November, they held a forum in the town of Smyrna. Dr. Martin was actually a part of that panel as well. Carl Boyd, Anthony Johnson, and several commissioners were in the audience. It was a very good, robust discussion about funding. In fact, a lot of things that we've discussed tonight will be great topics because this will be one specifically for the city of Laverne. I know that Commissioner Davidson and Oliver and myself, I believe Dr. Sullivan will be at that one as well to discuss specifically some Laverne issues. And tonight we have some real positive things moving towards helping Laverne out. So I just want to say I'm really glad to see that. But that forum will be great for anyone to attend or any commissioners to come as we just get out to the folks and discuss what we're doing. And I think one of the things we discussed tonight is what can we do to better get to the public what we're doing, what the needs are, what we're working towards, just to keep this public discussion going, so.
When was that again?
That will be on March 4th, that is a Monday, and I believe, is it 6 o'clock at the moment? I believe is the time.
Yeah.
And that will be at the City Hall in Laverne? Yeah. So League of Women Voters, and I really commend them for getting involved in the community, very good discussions, and there's a lot of folks that are ready to help. A lot of people running for county want to know how they can help. So the more we can do to tell them how we all work together to solve these problems, the better.
Sort of town hall?
That will be at the Laverne City Hall.
Laverne City Hall.
Laverne City Hall.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Just
Mr. Phillips?
one other thing, you guys are probably well aware of this, but the two fields, your chairman and vice chairman, were instrumental in getting our legislative delegation together and getting the ball rolling in a positive direction. And they really deserve more than a shout out, a real pat on the back, because the meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, which was before, a prelude actually to our steering committee meeting, which I thought was one of the best ones that I've ever attended. Even though we got some no's, we got some answers for the first time. So I thought it was a great meeting, but it wouldn't have happened in a positive manner without that meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, and these two guys are responsible for that. So good job.
Good job.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know I left out the last meeting. Was it, I'm just trying to see, is this where we're gonna have our meeting going forward, or what's the purpose of it from there to here?
We had, I think, and I forgot you were absent, so I brought it up initially. It's just a quirk of mine. I don't like being on a pedestal above the committee. It feels weird to be on in that environment for this type of meeting. So again, that's a personal quirk. Plus, in here, my 10 years in here, but prior to COVID, 8 years in here, it just seemed like a real practical, functional place, and all of our members could hear better in this space as opposed to out. And so I think we had a 6-person consensus. Did everybody agree to try it? And if you have any concern, we can move back. If there's any dysfunction or any lack of access, I am not demanding this, but we thought we'd just try it.
This is what the room the committee's always had met in prior to COVID. And I think kind of wanted to get back to this.
To me, though, there was an exception if there was some big public input happening, so it was an exception.
And we can always move over it at the last minute if something, a big crowd shows up or something.
If you consider it and have some concerns, we can certainly entertain them with you. As you
I was
contemplate.
caught off guard, so just asking the question.
Motion for adjournment, anyone?
So moved.
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.